I'm Kim Kral. I am reporting to you not live from my closet. Hi, everybody. Hi. How we doing? I'm all right. I have a doctor's follow-up e-visit appointment to hear about my blood work, I guess. And then also, I don't know. I'm gonna write down all my questions because usually when you get in there, and this new doctor, he has sort of like a I don't know, like a twitch, I think. Like hear me out. I'm not being a dick, but like not a twitch, but like after he says stuff, he does a ha. And I think it's like involuntary, but like with the mask, it sounds like he's laughing at me or not at me, but he's like giggling at his responses. But I think it's an involuntary thing. I'm not sure. But it makes me very self-conscious. And I'm already like, I don't know about you guys, but I'm already like nervous not nervous when I go, the doctors and stuff I'm not a big fan of, but it's like, there's something about being in that room and then being like, do you have any questions? And you're like, I had a million, but all of them are gone now. I don't remember any of them. So when I get off this, I'm going to write down my questions. I mean, it's just basically like, I want to know what the hell all the blood work was about. Like they sent me all the blood work and they might as well have sent me a document written in French. Because it was just like, okay, I don't know what a GSBLD is and why it's 250 milligrams. I made that up. But like literally like that, where I was like, okay, all I know is that I now have scoliosis, according to the x-rays. Everything else looks normal, I guess, with the lungs. But I'm like, doctor, you're not going to gaslight me into being like, because like they'll also be like, oh, like that's a big thing too. Like especially women will really be able to relate to this. And they've done studies about it where doctors tend to think women are making up symptoms or just being anxious. Like if you look up the stats, it's a lot of there's like a high number of women who have had heart attacks that have gone undiagnosed because the doctor calls it a quote panic attack. And it's real. Like I talk to a lot of my male friends about this and they're like, that can't be true. And it's like, okay, stop telling people their experiences aren't happening. That's so annoying. I went to the store today and I'm having one of those days where I'm just really, really impatient and just really impatient. God, the amount of people like I watched 4 people. I went to 3 different stores, 4 different people without their masks on, pulled around their chin, and then 2 people talking to a store clerk with their like taking their mask off to talk. And it's like, I don't think you know what the mask is for, you fucking moron. I'm trying, and like it's just one of those mornings where I'm just like really grumpy and really irritable. Everything is just like really like, and I'm like, I don't know. I was just like, God, universe, please take my impatience and irritability and replace it with compassion and self-love. Because if I'm loving myself, I can't really be pissed off at everybody else. But man, I'm really grumpy this morning. So just the amount of people that will tell you that your experience isn't real, and a lot of people will, especially men, sorry, but when you're like, oh, my experience with the doctor, they're like, that doesn't happen, or like, really, that's weird, that doesn't happen to me. It's like, yeah, I know, they've actually done studies on it that women aren't taken seriously in the doctor the way men are. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm not drinking wine or some bright pink. I'm drinking a bright pink drink out of a wine glass, and I like drinking non-alcoholic drinks out of my Broncos wine glasses because it makes me happy, but it's like airborne water. But yeah, so like it's just like so I have my, obviously I have IBS. You guys know I have IBS. Obviously it took me 45 to 50 episodes to finally run out of bathroom stories of my own because of my issues. And when I asked him when I was there the last time, when I told him all this stuff that was going on, he goes, well, what you should take a probiotic. And I was like, I do take a probiotic. He goes, well, do you take the same one consistently? And I was like, yeah, I usually do. And he's like, okay, well, that's really important because each probiotic from each brand is different and you need a consistent probiotic. And I was like, I didn't go, I've been switching it up every time. I just went, I didn't know that. Okay, well, I usually use the exact same kind, but that's good to know. On the thing he sent home to me about all this stuff that he helped me with, quote, helped me with, he was like, told her she's experiencing IBS symptoms, and I told her to take a probiotic. I'm like, you didn't tell me to take it. Like, you didn't help me. I don't know. I think I get stressed out before I go to the doctor because I've just had such a bad experience with this whole COVID thing. So I'm hoping, I mean, I ran out of my inhaler a few days ago and there was no refills and I kind of panicked and then I requested one and then I got one right away. So I'm hoping, I don't know, man. I don't know. This whole thing is just, so I'm a little irritable today, just a little irritable and, you know, just a little irritable. So I've been praying for some compassion and self-love. Just replace my impatience with that, right? Because it's also I want to read you guys something. So I do this. Have you guys ever heard of the Badass series? The You Are a Badass. If you haven't, it's by a writer called Jen Sincero. And I have all of her books. I have a couple of her books on audio. It's just really inspiring shit, right? Sorry, I'm like belchy again. I feel like every week I'm burpy and then I try to be like, I'm never that way. But then every week I'm burping into the microphone. So gross. I'm so sorry. But she has this daily calendar that I buy a lot of my girlfriends for. I buy like my closest girlfriends for Christmas every year. And then I also buy it for myself and I wrap it and I put it under the tree and I write myself a card because we all know that I am all about the self-love. Speaking of, real quick sidebar, would it be totally weird if I'm going to Denver next week and when I came back, would it be totally wild? And I've always marched to the beat of my own drum and I've never really, I don't really get myself involved of the opinions of other people of me as much as I used to. So I'm not really asking permission. I'm just saying it out loud. But for the first time, I think ever in my life, like maybe not ever, a couple of years ago, I felt this way when I was going to Portland. I'm really excited for Christmas. Like I have a lot of my Christmas shopping already done. So that's kind of exciting. And I'm like, I'll be done with it before December. Like that's the goal, is to get it done before December. Cause I'm trying to do this whole thing where I don't procrastinate anymore. Man, I have like a list of shit I want to talk about. And then as soon as I get in here, it all goes off the rails. But I think when I come back from Denver, I might put up my Christmas tree. Is that excessive? Is that crazy? It's just, I might be going somewhere for Christmas. And so I will only have, a little bit of time with the Christmas tree. I'm going to think about it. But it came into my mind today and I was just like, fuck it. There's no more rules. I am trying not to procrastinate anymore. One of the traits of someone who grew up in chaos and dysfunction, and it's really hard, not hard, but like when I try to advocate for people going to the 12 step I go to, I tell a few people in my life, not like be like, you need to go to this, but I think a lot of people, like I have some friends who listen to the shit I talk about. That's like, oh my God, that's so smart. And I'm like, dude, it's literally ACA, but they think like like they grew up in dysfunction, but it was like kind of covert and not not the way mine was, like clearly dysfunction and abuse and trauma. Like it's clear, black and white. What I went through was black and white trauma. Right. But because of what I went through, people think that like ACA is for people who are like went through crazy trauma, but it's not. It's for all kinds of dysfunction. There's people in there that like are like, yeah, I'm just really codependent because of how my parents, my mom was whatever. I can't get into, I can't think of an example right now, but one of the traits of growing up in dysfunction or chaos or codependency, dysfunction is a good blanket term for all of it, is that those adults that grow up that way, they grow up to be addicted to excitement. And that can be adrenaline, that could be, being scared, that can be, I think that's why I like really violent movies, like really fucked up movies, because I'm addicted to the excitement of it. And like when things are calm, I feel uneasy, right? Like my brain chemistry, I find like weird pleasure and like excitement and drama, right? I don't so much anymore because I've worked on it pretty hardcore, but that's like, that's my baseline. Because so addicted to excitement also equals the procrastination of like not paying bills on time, or like not, waiting until Christmas Eve at 7 p.m. to be when your flight is in like, 2 hours. I don't know if that, but like that, like to finish your Christmas shopping, and like the freaked out, or, like just that feeling you get when you're going to be like 10 minutes late. And I'm realizing that it's not just like relationships, because I'll pick these guys that are chaotic because it matches that of my childhood home and I feel safer in there. And I've taken a massive hiatus from dating to look at that. But like this year I'm I'm almost done with Christmas shopping, and it feels really good to not, have the chaos of like what will happen. It's just, I'm just really trying to work on that stuff. And so the Badass series, So I have this calendar, and I read this morning, and I don't remember exactly what it said, but I took a picture of it, and then I wrote down, read that on Crawl Space today. So I'm assuming it's helpful. But this was like 5 hours ago, and I don't remember what I did 25 minutes ago. So Brian Frog is real. So October 6th, 2021, You Are a Badass. And if you haven't heard of it, I recommend it wholeheartedly. Like if you're not a book reader, the audios are really awesome. Like it's just really inspiring. And it talks about you like looking at your shit, and changing your motherfucking life. I don't know why I need to swear. I need to. All right. You Are a Badass. And I also was out without my inhaler for a few days, and I knew that this was coming. It's like not right away, but I know that like I knew like after a couple, I have it now, but it's like I got to play catch up. So my breathing's all fucked up today, but it will be fine. All right. You are a badass. We all have habitual places where we stop, a certain threshold where something gets too intimate or too expensive or too close to success for our comfort. Crossing this threshold is exactly what we need to do to exit our comfort zones and transform our lives, which is why it's so terrifying to us and why our subconscious minds gather all the king's horses and all the king's men to make sure we run away. And that came right after I was writing this morning about a thing that I have been struggling a lot with in my life lately is, right when I first started working on my shit and, going to 12 steps and like really like looking at my, my life and who I surrounded myself with and, my patterns or whatever, the healthier I was getting, I had a lot of dysfunctional people in my life and a lot of toxic energy and people. And the healthier I was getting, the more those people were literally fucking off on their own. And I talk about that a lot, where they're just fucking off on their own. And now I'm on a different level, I guess. I don't know. I'm in a different stage of it where I'm really uncomfortable because I'm struggling with relationships right now. Not all of them, but I have a few relationships with people that we just no longer have anything really in common. And they're kind of staying in the same place, and I'm kind of moving forward. And, they don't reach out unless I reach out. It's not, I'm learning I'm really living in the gray now, and it's just not black and white the way it used to be. And so I have a few relationships where I'm like, I'm not quite ready to let this person go, but I'm also not really willing to have them so close in my life. And it's a really uncomfortable place to be. And then I read that badass thing where it was just like, oh, that's outside of your comfort zone. And my comfort zone is to reach out to these people and be like, just thinking about you. I hope you're doing well. Like, love me. Don't leave me. I'm afraid of abandonment, even if I do it myself. Like, I just need to hold on to every relationship so I don't feel that awful feeling I felt as a child when I was abandoned, right? And so now I'm just, God, I'm so fucking breathy, which is really cool because I'm doing that teledoc in an hour. So hopefully it'll be as bad in an hour so this guy can fucking see how much I can't breathe. Sorry. Getting gaslit at the doctor, and you get like, again, ask every woman you know. And if you're a woman, you'll be like, yeah, this happens. You get gaslit at the doctor every single time. Like, they're just like, oh, you're probably your period. Like they say, what? Okay, I'm back on the other thing. I'm so annoyed today. And I'm trying to stay out of the wreckage of the future, even if the future is in 1 hour with this doctor. Cause I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen yet. He may listen. He may actually help me. Expect the best and get it, right? And so like, I don't know. So I'm like kind of struggling with that, and like, it's uncomfortable just to sit here and sort of let a relationship be where it's at, instead of me trying to push it along or try to figure out or like mold myself or like stay stuck in order for me to still be close to these people. And there's nothing wrong with these people. Like, it's not like before where the people I'm just talking about were like fucking toxic. It's just like people that you're just like, oh, we just don't, like, I'm evolving. And not that they aren't. I can't tell you if they are or not. It just feels like they are the same that they've always been. And it's a struggle I've been going through lately. Not a big struggle, but just something that I've just been like noticing and how uncomfortable I am and just letting things be. And that's getting out of my own comfort zone or getting out of my comfort zone, you know? Just because somebody isn't right for my life right now doesn't mean I don't still love them, care for them, wish them well. It just means we're sort of splitting off for a little bit. And it's painful. Not pain in it, but and I'm in the spot right now where now I'm realizing every time I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'm like, fuck, this is it. And we're about to grow a little bit more. And so on the other side of this, it's going to be really fucking cool, but you got to go through this thing right now, this uncomfort and this grow or this, this uncomfortableness and this, just out of your comfort zone shit. And you got to go through it and you have to sit with it and you have to because I know for me before when I'd have these uncomfortable feelings, I would reach out to that person because it was immediate gratification, right? They'll respond. Then I feel better. They're not mad at me. Cool. Or like, oh, I don't want to call that guy. I'll call that guy or I'll just drink or I'll just watch 12 hours of TV, like anything to dissociate from how I'm feeling with being sad or uncomfortable. And it's really new and cool and scary, but I'm just going to keep doing it. I'm going to just keep and holding space for those people, and just being like, I wish you well, but I gotta keep going. And it seems like you're kind of running in place and maybe you're not, but that's my perception. And it's just not, it feels so weird to say that it's just not suiting me right now. And I don't know. I never was that way before. It was always just like, don't abandon people. Never, I shouldn't abandon him now because he's going through this stuff. And it's just like, well, you can't. One thing an old sponsor gave me that like, it really, really helped me. You cannot abandon an adult. Cannot. Like they can say you abandoned them, but it's like, well, you can't abandon an adult. Like that's not like the girl I was good friends with, the beginning of the year, and our friendship is over because I set boundaries and she wouldn't listen to them. God, she still doesn't listen to them. It's wild. She reached out to me and asked if we could talk. I don't know if I told you guys this, asked if we could talk. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. Here are my boundaries. Not like if we talk, it has to be at this specific time or what, but it was just like, oh yeah, I have a really busy 3 days. So I'm not going to be able to make space for that. But then after that, I'm free this day and this day. Are you okay? And then she blocked me. But I mean, that's just narcissism, right? But like, you didn't respond exactly the way I think you did. But it's just like I set a boundary, and I don't know. Sometimes I think I'm talking in circles, and then other times I feel like maybe someone out there is picking up what I'm saying and is like, oh, I needed to hear that. I guess I needed to say it, even if nobody needed to hear it. But yeah, it's just an odd feeling because it used to be like, don't leave anybody behind, make sure everybody's your friend, make sure everybody likes you and everybody wants to spend all their time with you. And it's so like when I was younger, people would say, yeah, the older you get, the smaller your circle group gets. And for a long time, I was like, God, it actually seems like the older I get, the bigger my circle gets. And it's not that it's the older I get, the more acquaintances I make and the more, good acquaintances that I, would take their call or like not but like, friendly, more friendly I am with people. Like if that makes sense. Like I met a bunch of people this last week and I'll tell you about, I worked at a wild festival. It was wild. But those people are great, but they're not going to, I don't venture. I mean, maybe one of them will be, I have no idea. I don't have a crystal ball, but like, not everyone's going to be the people that you confide in. Right. And I think that's what they mean. The circle is smaller. I have maybe 5 people that I tell everything to. Yeah. And I don't really hold back on. And that's great. That maybe 3 actually. No, probably 5. That doesn't matter. But but then like I have a bunch of friends that I care about and that I would, I want good things for. It's just a lot of new stuff for the old Kralski, a lot of new stuff. Yeah, I worked this festival this last weekend. So I worked years ago when I worked at the Korean nightclub. There was 3 women that would come in all the time after like, at happy hour, and I always waited on them and they were really cool. And we had this great rapport. They were just really cool ladies. So I'd buy them shots and we do shots together. They were just really awesome ladies, right? Turns out they own I don't know if they own, but they ran I think it doesn't matter, a staffing company for festivals. And so one day, one of the women was like, "What are you doing? Do you want to work Pride this weekend?" Pride's Gay Pride is a huge, or LGBTQ plus. I think there's another letter now. Fuck. Plus parade. It's a huge deal in West Hollywood and LA. I know it's pretty big in a lot of major cities. So if you're listening in a smaller place, you probably know what Pride is. And it's a huge event. And I was like, oh yeah. And it was so funny because they were like, well, you do have to come in and fill out a bunch of paperwork. You basically got the job. You just have to do a pour test, which is like, I hadn't used a jigger in a long, long time, but I guess it was like, I passed the pour test with flying colors. It's just like, you have to free pour 1.5 ounces and free pour 2.5 ounces. And I nailed it, which was awesome. And so I worked this Pride event and it was really, it was a lot of fun. I did work next to this terrible dude who was just not, would just make comments all day about all the stuff he was seeing. It was just like a straight white dude that just all day, it was just like, I don't care if they want to be called a boy, I'll call them a boy, but I still think they're, and I was just like, dude, I do. No, why does this happen? Why? You should be back on. Why are you not back on? Oh my God, I'm so annoyed. I don't have time for you to do this. I don't have time. So fucking annoying. Hello, are you working? It's just so fucking annoying. I just don't have time to. The microphone unplugged again. And I don't even think it did unplug. I don't know. It's just so annoying. It's so annoying. Guys, I'm so annoyed today. I will, full disclosure, I am starting my period in the next 24 to 48 hours. And that's usually when I'm like, I think I'm like one minor inconvenience away from just like ripping someone's jugular out with my teeth. You look at that, think of that imagery. That's how irritated I am. Like the one person who will cross me today, I will fucking flip out. And women in the room are like, yeah, we know how dudes. I mean, most you guys understand that. Like, it's just the hormones are just crazy. They're not crazy, but they're real, dude. They're fucking real. So the event was fine. It was really, I sat next to this guy who was just like fresh off the boat from whatever fucking small town he was from and had never seen anybody other than, just regular white people, like straight white people, as far as he knew. But so everything was just like, well, I don't care. And I hold space for that guy. Hopefully that guy lived in Los Angeles for the last 3 years and has grown, or he went back to his little small town somewhere, whatever, it doesn't matter. But I ended up making a lot of money that day. And like a good amount of money, but then they never really called me again. And then the world ended. And then recently they started sending out emails about working with the company again. And so I applied I've been applying and I finally got this job this last weekend. It was at a rave. It was at a fucking rave. There's a couple things that I'd like to tell you about. Did anybody go to raves back in the day? The best part about this festival, because my cousin was like, I went to raves, but I don't remember a company sponsoring it or like working it. And I'm like, honestly, because everybody was doing drugs. I'm like, I think when I went to raves, I was under 21. So I would never go to the bars. Right. And I was doing ecstasy. So we weren't eating, but there were bars. It was like they hired DJs and shit. So I'm assuming it was happening then, but I have no idea. But it was a cool event, because it was just like sitting around and looking at, it was just like literally every kind of person you could possibly think of, big, small, every race, every sexual orientation, everyone just being who the fuck they were, right? Like everybody just being who they were, and young, old. It was a 21-year-old event and up. So it was all over 21, but those kids now look like they're fucking, 9. But like it was just, and I'm sitting there and I was on my break and I was eating this wild buffalo chicken grilled cheese, which was something I'm going to dream about for years to come. And I was just like, God, what a fucking cool time to be alive. Like, I'm so grateful I live in a city at a time, because I know this is not the case in everywhere in our country and the world, but in Los Angeles, I get to live in a place where people get to just be who the fuck they are and who the fuck they want to be without people going, yeah, well, I'll call you a dude, but I don't actually think you're really a woman to me. You know what I mean? Like, they're the minority here, the people who feel that way. But other than that, everyone is just like, be who you are, right? Like, be who you are. And it was just such a cool, everybody was high on something. And there was one guy, like, for the first day I was bartending next to the medic tent, and there was a guy who took too much Molly. I think the kids do Molly now. I did ecstasy back in the day. And he was in the tent. It's so great. It's my favorite thing all day. He was in the tent because he took too much, but he was like just licking the fuck out of his face with his eyes dancing. And he, for like 4 hours, was just sitting in the medic tent. And they were monitoring him, obviously, and like having the goddamn time of his life, just the time of his life. And maybe this didn't happen back when I was at raves in Colorado with like medic tents. And maybe that's why now it's just like, yeah, we'll have all this stuff. Obviously, we know there'll be drugs, but it's better for you guys to do drugs and be safe than it is. But then there was this other girl who was young and she had like these pigtails. And she was so mad to be in that medic tent. And they just had to progressively put like layers on her. She had the blanket, the like, what is it? Like tinfoil blanket. It was just progressively madder while the guy next to her was just like dancing to the techno music. It was very funny, but everybody was okay because they were all medics there, right? But like, it was just so cool because it was just like every single type of human, and it was just cool to see, like, especially with everything, you know, that we are exposed to and how much hate we see, especially after this whole Facebook whistleblower bullshit. Like, you guys didn't know that Facebook's algorithm was designed to piss you off and to like spread false information. Like, a lot of these anti-vaxxer people they'll probably somehow figure out a way to justify this whole, well, Facebook was knowingly spreading false information that because they were afraid of losing money. They saw that they put this information on there, they didn't stop it, and statistically people would stay on the app more if they were watching hate. And I don't even know where to put that, because it's like, do we just like upload every photo you've ever put on Facebook? Because like for a while you were using it as like I was using it as like like a photo album. A lot of my shit on there is like pictures I don't have at all anymore. And I'm like, I think I'm going to start uploading those because I don't know what's going to happen to Facebook. But wild times we live in. But what was I saying? Rave. There was one guy at the rave. Real quick, the anti-vaxxer stuff, just real quick. And I mean, I assume I already lost all the people that wouldn't have that are anti-vaxxers last year when I went on my whole political diatribe, which I stand by. But I just, look, if you're going to believe something or you're going to have an opinion so strong, like this opinion about not getting vaccinated, if you're going to have the mandates, have your opinion, but fucking back it up with more than just, I read some article on Facebook or watched some YouTube video by some guy that is not reputable at all. I was talking to this guy and he was like, well, I'm vaccinated, but I don't agree with the government mandate. And I was like, why not? He goes, I just don't like the government telling us what to do. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. You don't think the government tells us what to do often? And he's like, well, no, like, I just don't like that they're now starting to just like taking our rights away. Like, what's next? Like, after this, we're going to be forced to do that. And I was like, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. The government shouldn't be able to tell us what to do. So on your way over here in your car, did you use a seatbelt? Did you stop at those stop signs and stoplights, ride on the right side of the road, use your blinker? You have pants on right now. The government tells us what to do all of the goddamn time. This has been going on since the beginning of time. Look, when human beings emerged, we could have just all been happy swimming in the lake naked, but instead we decided to make rules and governments and laws. And guess what? You are told by the government what to do all of the time. all of the time. And he was like, oh, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I don't think about it that way. I was like, also, you have a vaccination passport. That is not a new thing. We all had to get vaccinated and get a vaccine passport. Vaccination passport, vaccine passport, I think tomato, tomato, in order to go to elementary school. So that's not new. That's been around forever. And he was like, oh, and I was like, and honestly, dude, I don't really want to argue about this because I don't care. I care, but like, I don't like, if you're going to have an opinion about something, have just, and by the way, an opinion that like you feel so strongly that you need to yell at people, back up your information. Actually have multiple resources, not just some guy. Like people are like quoting the fucking pillow guy. What is happening? Make it make sense. Jesus. So, and a guy, one of the guys at the rave was coming up to me. First of all, he had a friend. So he had a friend before. I didn't know they were friends, but one guy was came up to my bar, and I had a bee, like a buzzing bee, like bee. I don't. Bzz, that's what they do. At sitting at my station, I had like a little bit of a Sprite left, and he was just like drinking it. And I don't know. Bees don't bother me. The bee sting doesn't hurt. They're like, I'm not talking wasps or yellow jackets. I just mean like regular bees. Like their bee sting, the sting doesn't hurt. Guys, if you're like, it hurts. I mean, if you're allergic, I get it. But other than that, it doesn't hurt. It's kind of an annoying pain and it itches a shit ton like 2 days later. But then you just put Benadryl on it. Like it's not like it's not breaking your arm in convenient pain, right? And so, and I don't know, they don't bother you unless you bother them. So he was just kind of sitting there, and this guy came up and he was like, oh, yeah, the bee isn't really bothering you. I was like, not really. And he goes, well, if you ever see a bee that's dying, put a little sugar in water and put him in it, and he'll sip up the sugar and it'll bring him back to life and you can save a bee. And I was like, oh my God, that's great. I love bees. So that guy's separate. And then another guy comes up, it all comes together. Another guy comes up to me and he's like, he orders a double or something, and we have to pour in the jiggers. So I don't know if everyone that's working these events just aren't pouring the right pours, but a lot of people are like, you're really hooking us up. And I double checked the fucking chart 18 times that I was doing the right amount. I'm like, am I just over pouring everybody? And I'm like, no, I'm doing the exact amount, whatever. So he was like, yeah, I'm going to come back to you. So this guy loved me all night, right? So him and the B guy ended up knowing each other. So they came up to the bar and they're like, oh my God, we love her. Yeah, we've both been coming to her all night. And we're talking, and then he goes, well, the guy, B guy was like this adorable little hippie who was probably like 22. And then the other guy was like this big alpha who probably says the word beta bitch. He goes, well, now that the pandemic's over. And I was like, oh, pandemic's not over. And he goes, excuse me? And I was like, well, it's not over, dude. People are still, and I don't know why I pick your battles, Kralski. Pick your fucking battles. Although I'm really glad I didn't, because what transpired next was so bizarre that I'm glad it happened. He was like, what? And I was like, well, you had to be vaccinated to get into this event. And I'm wearing a mask because it's still spreading. And he's like, okay, whatever, fucking Joe Biden. He's like, you're a motherfucking Joe Biden. Joe Biden. He called me Joe Biden like 15 times. I was like, I'm sorry, is your insult calling me Joe Biden? I mean, we do look alike. And his friend's kind of giggling. And then the guy like starts yelling at me about masks and how the government's controlling them. It's not cool. And I was just like, dude, what are you doing right now? He goes, what? And I was like, seriously, man, like take a pause. What are you doing? Like, no one here is arguing with you. I'm not raising my voice. This guy doesn't want anything to do with this conversation. I'm just pouring you drinks and you're here at a festival. Go do your drugs and have fun. And he's like, oh yeah, I guess I got all heated up. I'm like, what is happening? Make it make sense. But it was really cool. And it was also awesome because those events, you end up making quite a bit of money, which is really awesome for my, going after my dreams and freelance work stuff. It's guys, it's fucking panning out. And the barbacks and the manager was like, oh yeah, you're a great bartender. We want you to work the events more often. Please come back. And I was like, oh my God, that's so, it was a cool. And then, I got to bartend next to this broad who just moved from Kentucky, and she was like a fun personality. Who was just a nice girl, nice woman. I don't know, who worked hard. It was just kind of fun being next to her. It was, and everyone I met was just a cool weekend. And I love, have I mentioned this enough lately? I love not having to be at a bar at a certain shift and deal with all of the bullshit that comes with working in a restaurant. And it's universal. Like every restaurant bar I've ever worked in, there is always some kind of drama, some kind of gossip, some kind of mean girl hierarchy. Look, and I've been the top of the mean girl hierarchy, and I was that for a very long time in my younger days. I've been and now I'm just in the like, I don't care. Like the girl I was bartending next to was just like, I was like, oh, I was, there was some rule that we were supposed to follow that she wasn't. And she was like, well, I don't want to do that. And I was just like, okay. And she's like, you're going to do that. And I was like, I literally don't care. I literally don't care. If these people were like, hey, you need to pour a beer in that. Well, I said pee in a margarita. I was like, they told me to pee in a margarita and serve it to people. I'd fucking do it. I literally don't care. And then I realized the logic behind that is just a little weird to say to a stranger. Because she got her whole face changed and she goes, why would you pee in a margarita? And I was like, my point is that I care so little about the rules and not like I follow them because doesn't matter to me. So if they're like you, because she's like, I hate using jiggers. And I was like, oh, I don't care. And she's like, well, I don't care either, but I just would rather not to use them. And I was like, I literally don't care. Like if they were like, use them, don't use them. I don't care. And she was like, yeah. And it was just like, just because, and it's such a great place to be mentally because I don't get involved in any of the bullshit. And it's like, and it's just because I'm like, I have 6 things I'm working on in my life: career, personal, spiritual, mental, financial, right? And everything else is just noise in the background. And I can pick it up and flip out like the jigger. I can pick it up and be so mad I got to use these jiggers. And the wild thing is, so if you don't, by the way, if you don't know what a jigger is, it's when you go to a bar, it happens a lot at craft cocktail bars. It's the measuring cup bartenders use to measure out the alcohol and ingredients that are going in your drink, right? So it's like the little metal measuring cups. And I've used them. They're used in a lot of craft cocktail bars, not because they're cheap. It's because they want you, like craft cocktails have to have a specific ingredient, like a specific measurement of each ingredient in order for it to taste the way you want it to taste, right? In order for it to have the exact taste, because it's a science and a chemistry. And if you go to a really nice cocktail bar, they use them, right? Now, at Big Wang's, they started using them years ago. God, I was the origin of this whole thing. I actually wasn't the origin of this whole thing, but I was part of it. We had these stupid martinis we had to make, and they were ridiculous. They were like sugar rim. One of them we had to like roast a marshmallow behind the bar with a fucking blowtorch. It was insane. And they were like $10 cocktails that at happy hour they were $5, and they go to the cheapest fucking people would order them and not tip on these. And they were awful. All of us hated them, right? And so a girl who was a dear friend, was one of my best friends. We met at Big Wang's. We were best friends. I was actually talking about her yesterday. She has ended our friendship like 52 times. We don't really no longer speak. I wish her the best. There's not really any, like, she's just kind of a chaotic person, and she has her own shit that I hold space for in my heart. I love her a lot. I wish her well. But she is a very like either my way or no way. And if you don't do exactly what I want, I'm never speaking to you again. And she did that to me a lot of times. Right. And no longer would I put up with that shit, obviously, because she's no longer really in my life. But again, if you're listening and you might know who you are, I send you lots of love. You are, you're a good human. You're an all right human. There's no way she's listening to this. I think she's muted me on everything. Anyway. So she ordered, not at the bar, because of course she came into the restaurant and she didn't sit at the bar. Of course she didn't sit at the bar. We were in a fight, quote, a fight. And the fight stuff is so funny. Like my best friend Sarah and I, this woman's like my sister, right? She's the first friend I made out in Los Angeles. And we were 22 years old. We were talking about people who get in fights with their friends and like don't talk to their friends because they're in a fight. And Sarah and I made a promise to each other where we were like, hey, we're adults. We're not in a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship thing. If one of us has a problem with the other one, why don't we just talk it out? And if we can't talk it out, then we shouldn't be friends anymore. And we just made that pact where it was like, yeah, if you ever make me mad, I'm not going to be like, we're in a fight. It's just so childish to me. And so I just never engaged in that. So she came in one night. This is the origin of the jiggers. I promise I don't know if there's really a moral of the story, but it's just so funny how, like, when you're, I hope you're all staying with me because I am like bees. Um, my brain is all over, but it is like, when I was like 20, I had this boyfriend who was, well, he was 23, which isn't that much, but when I was 21, I had a lot of friends in their 30s, and they would always be like, oh my God, you're so young. You're so young. You're so young. And I was like, I'm not that much younger than you. Like, I had a friend who was like 28, and she was like, dude, you're so young. And I'm like, we're only a few years apart. And then I hit 28, and I was like, dude, that girl is right. The growth you do, right? And so it's just so funny, the like perspective you have, or the hindsight's 2020, like they say, right? And so she orders this blueberry fucking lemon drop or some shit, and we weren't using jiggers, and I was never really at this. I was not a trained bartender. This is my first bartending gig. Nobody really trained me, and I didn't know how to pour an ounce and a half. Nobody did that at that job, right? Um, and so I just made it, and it was obviously probably not that gross. So she sends it back and asks for another one, but of course makes the server send it back, and she's like, so and so wants another one. And I was like, of course this fucking bitch does. So I try and make another one. She doesn't like it again, and she just orders something else, and then goes to our owner, the boss, who, like, I am also friends with. Like, the owner of this bar had a bunch of had like three of us girls that were like his confidants, right? And I was also one of them, but she goes to him and tells on me. And it's like, she doesn't know how to pour an ounce half. This bitch had never bartended at this point, right? At all. And even when she did bartend, she was not a good bartender. Sorry, let's throw in some shade. I don't care. But like, just to tell on someone who used to be your friend. So because she told on me, the owner came in and bought a bunch of jiggers and made us all use jiggers, right? And was just like, no more free porn. None of you know what the fuck you're doing. And instead of like training us, it was just like, no, you just have to use jiggers now. And all of us were so mad about it, except for one bartender. He was a guy who worked there forever, Franny. I do have one more story about Franny too, because he was fucking about my book. He like Franny was like, he was like an older, he was, I think he's like, I don't know, at this point, like I think he was like 10 years older than us. And he had a kid at the time. Now he's like 3. He might have 4. I feel like once people hit 3, I lose track, and I think they either have 3 or 9. There's no in between. I think it's only 3. Fuck, I feel like a terrible friend. This guy is one of my favorite humans that has ever walked the face of the earth. But he had a kid and another kid on the way, right? And he had a wife, and he was doing music, and he had his whole other life. And I was like, oh, you're not mad about the jiggers? He was literally the only one that wasn't mad. And he goes, no, I don't care. And I was like, oh, he goes, at all. I don't give a fuck at all. If they tell me to use the jigger, I'll use the jigger. Like, you know what this job is? It's for me to pay my bills so I can take care of my family and do my music. And I didn't get it until that's who I am now. Like, I literally don't care. Like, if they're like, I worked this job a couple of years ago, and it was at the start of my, like, I don't give a fuck anymore. I'm on a different path, and this is just a job that supports my dreams and my lifestyle, right? And this terrible guy that I worked for a couple of days, I worked there maybe 2 months or something like that. This guy was a white guy with dreads. All you need to know how horrible this dude was. And he was like, oh yeah, in the old fashions, or no, yeah, he's like, in the old fashions, we use honey because we don't have simple syrup. And I was like, okay. He goes, well, it's the same thing. And I was like, no, it's not. And he's like, yeah, it is. And then it clicked. I was like, what do you care? Sure. I was like, fine, dude, we'll use fucking honey in the fucking old fashions. Fine. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, and that was the moment that I was like, I don't care. Franny was right the whole time. I wonder if he listens to this. If he does, he was this guy. So when I put out my book a couple of months ago, he commented on, when I announced the book, he commented on the Facebook page, and he goes, just so we're all clear and all on the same page, I predicted this 10 years ago, that this would happen 10 years ago. I knew you were going to write a book 10 years ago. And you know what? Now that I'm about to tell the story, it is fucking more accurate than when I read that little comment. When I read that comment, I was like, you did tell me I was going to write a book. So when I worked at Big Wangs, I was a little bit more high strung than I am now. I just, I hadn't worked through my trauma, so I was really controlling about things I couldn't control, whatever. I was a little high strung, and one day I was bartending alone. Franny was the manager, and two customers. We were really busy at the bar, and two customers asked for something at the same time. A server ticket popped up, and then the phone started ringing, and I was like about into full panic mode. And then Franny popped, like he might as well popped up like a cartoon. And he goes, "Is this the moment?" And I was like, "What?" He goes, "Is this the moment that I've been waiting for?" I'm like, "What?" He goes, "You're fucking Jenga." And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "This is how I think your life is going to pan out." He goes, "I think that you're going to be moderately successful." He was like, "I think you're never going to be like hugely famous," which hopefully that's not true. Hopefully I'll blow up. But he's like, "I think you're going to be, moderately like famous. You're going to have a little bit of a following, but then you're going to have some sort of drug or alcohol problem. Nothing serious, nothing crazy, but then you're going to have a total breakdown. And then you're going to write a book. And I think you should name the book Jenga. This is how it all fell apart." And then he's like, "And by the way, right now, the two customers are still waiting. Now the waitress is waiting for her drink and the phone is still ringing." And he is explaining this in real time. And he goes, "And I think on the cover of it, you should have a picture of the board game Jenga. And on each piece, it should have a picture of some moment in your life that's in the book." And I was like, "You thought a lot about this." And he goes, "I've been thinking about it for years." I was like, "What the fuck?" And he's so right. Because though it's not Jenga, and though I didn't have like a massive drug problem, drinking problem, but I did have if you listen to it, I did have a drinking problem. And uh and then it all fell apart. And then I wrote a book about how it all fell apart and how I put it all back together. And I mind fucking blown. Oh man. He's also the guy when you read the book, the chapter, God, what is that? Lunch Dump, the chapter about the comedian. He was the guy behind the bar. So the first date with the comedian, TC, we call him in the chapter. And the first date that I was so uncomfortable and I didn't want it to be a date, and I didn't realize it was a date until I got there. If you haven't read the book, why haven't you read the book? What the fuck? Just kidding. Buy my book, Confessions of a Recovering Party Girl. And so like Franny comes over with the bill. I think I used his real name in the book too. I definitely did. And he's like the only, like, I don't say anything incriminating so that he can't sue me one day, but he's the only person I forgot to ask if I could use his real name. And he comes over and he's like, we're like, "Oh, we'll get our check." And the comedian goes, "Yeah, he's like, "I wanted to get her drinks." And the comedian got food. And I was like, "Oh yeah, I wanted to buy his drinks because I wanted to buy him a couple drinks because it was his birthday. And, I'll get his food." And he's like, "Yeah, and I'll just get her drinks." And Franny just deadpans goes, "To split it?" Yeah, I was like, "Yeah, so uncomfortable." He's just one of my favorite human beings. And so we used to work a lot alone together. Where he was the manager and I was the bartender server or whatever. And one morning we were setting up and we had this thing called Tap TV. Fucking nightmare. If you go to sports bars now, you'll see it. It's like this color coordinated digital layout of the sports bars TVs where you tap it's a fucking nightmare. It used to break down all the time. It was just like one of the things that we all just hated. I avoided for so long learning how to use it because I knew how much everyone hated it. And then I finally learned. And then as soon as you knew how to use it, everybody is like, "Kim knows how to use the TV." So one morning, Franny's putting all the fucking TVs in, right? And I'm setting up the bar. And he looks at his stocks, I think. He was like, his investments. And he goes, "Look at that." He goes, "This stock is 1 point away from me making $100,000. My stock making $100,000, something like that. I don't know much about investing, but it was like this tiny thing has to move this way, and I'll make 100 grand." And I was like, "Holy shit, Franny, that's fucking cool. I hope that happens." And he goes, "Cards on the table. If that happens, I'm gonna walk straight over to that fucking Tap TV, and I'm gonna rip every cord of it out and I'm going to throw it on the ground and then I'm going to walk out flipping you off." And I was like, "But I'm the only person in here. Like, no one's going to see it." And he's like, and it made me like, it was just so funny. And it didn't happen. Sadly, I wish that guy, I mean, man, that guy's one of my favorites. But that is sort of making me think of all the funny quitting stories. And I'm running out of time, so I'm gonna write that. I have it written down, the funny quitting stories at Big Wangs. I will end on one one manager quitting story. So this guy Rob, God, I loved him. He was just one of the coolest chill guys, right? Chill guys. I don't know. He's just a really cool dude, right? And one Friday night we were bartending. And it was this guy Ryan and I. We were bartending, and we're cleaning up and Rob comes out and he pours himself this big cup of whiskey. And like sometimes, after a night, you would like pour yourself a little drink and you would, clean while you drank a little bit or whatever. But he poured himself like a big, and it was like expensive whiskey. It was like, and Big Wangs, it was like Knob Creek or some shit, like not crazy expensive, but definitely expensive for Big Wangs. And he pours himself this massive glass of fucking whiskey, right? Massive. And he lights a cigarette in the bar, something we never did, right? Ever. That wasn't a thing I've worked at bars where you lit a cigarette and you could smoke in the bar, but like after everybody was gone. But he lights a cigarette and he's sitting there and he has this weird calm about him, this odd calm. And Ryan and I kind of look at each other and we're like, okay, so we're cleaning up, whatever. And then we leave and Rob walks us out and he's like, all right, guys, well, I just want you guys to know how much I really appreciate you two. You two are great. And we're like, thanks, Rob. You too. And he's like, can we hug? Rob never hugged us. We both were like, all right. So we hug Rob. We hug Rob. And we go home and we come back the next morning because it was football Saturday. So it was early in the morning when Ryan and I come back and we're met we weren't the first ones there, but we got there around like 10 or whatever. And we're met at the door by all of the staff that's working. And they're like, yo, what happened last night? And we're like, what do you mean? Nothing. Like, it was like, it was like the first night of karaoke, right? That's important for the story. And we're like, nothing. And they're like, was Rob okay? And we're like, yeah, Rob was fine. Why? And they're like, because Rob wrote his resignation letter and left it on the desk. And then Ryan and I look at each other. We're like, oh, that explains a lot. And then we were like, we just thought he was being weird. We didn't think much of it. And it's because he was like, well, I'm quitting. Who cares? And it was one of the most epic quits. And then later I ran into Rob a bunch over the years. Just a really cool fucking dude. I ran into him and we talked about his quitting and he goes, you want to know what it was? They sprung on me that night that there was going to be karaoke and that Fridays were now going to be karaoke and that my shift, I was going to have to fucking deal with karaoke. And he goes, and I just had a moment where the voice went, you don't have to do this anymore. Things are going to work out. Fucking quit. And you know what? I don't know what Rob does now, but I know that things did work out. Rob's fine. Rob's paying his bills. Rob's not like homeless and dead. You know what I mean? Like I heard moved back east and he's doing great. So I don't know. The point of all that story is just like, keep your eye on the ball, man. Keep your eye on the fucking ball. Cause it's like, you never know. It's just like shit doesn't like when I worked at El Tejano, I think the place is called, for like 5 days last year before I worked at the other bar that I got COVID at. The girl that was training me was so fucking intense. And like, she's limping around and I was like, are you okay? Do you want to sit down? She's like, my knee is really swollen. It was like full of liquid that needed to be drained. She'd sprained her ankle and she had this crazy gash on her arm. And I was like, dude, go home. And she's like, I can't. If I go home, this place will fall apart. And I was like, dude, I was you 10 years ago, except for I wasn't our age, because she's my age. And I was like, except for I was younger and had way better hair. Her hair was like 1980s, like popped up, like spiky, like almost the like 80s, big hairspray shit. Not that, but like the bump, it doesn't matter. But it's just like, God, and it was just like, what do you want to do with your life? You know what I mean? Like, what do you want to do with your life? And if what you're currently doing to pay your bills is not what the end goal is, just keep your eye on the ball, man. My dad told me that when I moved out here. And my dad, though a colorful man, abusive and, not great. There were some things that he taught me that were great. Again, I live in the gray now, not black and white. But when I moved out here, he said that. He was just like, keep your eye on the ball. He's like, there's going to be a lot that's going to happen. And you have one goal. And you keep it on, you just keep your eye on the ball. And I lost that for a really, really long time. And along the way, I've gotten lessons that have like veered me back that way. And that it's so true. If you're doing what you don't want to do right now, that's fine. Like that's what they talk about in the Badass book too, where it's like, there's a book called You Are a Badass at Making Money. And it's like all of us have had to do jobs we don't want to do in order for a bigger end goal, right? Like, so if you have to scrape gum off of tables, which I had to do for a lot at Big Wangs, right? That was like a thing we had to do a lot at Big Wangs, especially if we got in trouble. So I scraped my fair share of gum. And it was just like, if that's who you are, don't be ashamed of your job and don't half-ass it because it's not the end goal. Like, be the best fucking gum scraper you can be, but also remember why you're scraping gum. Like, remember, you know what? So it's just like, I think about Franny being like, I don't care. If he wants me to use jiggers, I'll use fucking jiggers. If he wants me to not put anything on my comp tab and not give it away, I don't care what these people think. I'm going to take care of my family and do my music. And I don't know what that's worth to anybody, but I have learned, it's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in all of my day jobs. Find out what you want to do with your life and do whatever it takes. And if that means, bartending in a festival in the middle of nowhere, be the best bartender there you can be, but keep your eye on the fucking ball. Like, pick your battles. I don't know. I do know. I'm trying to get that out of my vocabulary. My old sponsor used to tell me, she would be like, you do that a lot. You say you don't know, and then you say what it is, and it is that you do know. It was ingrained in my brain so early on that I didn't know anything, and everything I thought and did was wrong. And so I'm still, God, man, I'm just a work in progress. We always talk about it, right? Whew. Oh, and there's one more story I want to tell. This might be a little bit longer of an episode, which is good because I feel like I only did like 58 minutes last week. I don't know, whatever. So I was, this came up the other day. A friend of mine had a bit of a career disappointment, right? And I brought this story up, and I don't know if anybody, and she knew the story, so I didn't need to tell her. So she knew exactly what I was talking about. But it's a cool story for dreams, right? Because you just never know. Like, I tried out to be in this immersive museum with my dear friend, I don't know, earlier this year, and I didn't get the part. I wasn't hired, and I was kind of bummed. And I went to my friend, and I was just like, "Oh, they didn't hire me. I'm really bummed out." And she goes, "Huh, I can't wait to see why not." And I thought she meant like she's going to find out the reason and tell me. And that's kind of bitchy that she's like, "Oh, I can't wait for the gossip." And I was like, "Oh, what do you mean?" And she goes, "Well, in my experience, when you don't get something you want, it's usually because there's like something way better that you'll get, but you wouldn't have got if you would have gotten that, if that makes sense." But you know what I mean? Like, it's like I always say the universe has 3 answers for you when you ask a question. Yes, not yet. I have something better for you. And so it reminds me of the story. And I don't know if you guys have heard it. You should look up in her words, because I didn't look it up to read her words right now, but I encourage you to look it up if you want to hear more about it. But Lisa Kudrow, such a left turn, I know. Lisa Kudrow was up for the role of Roz in Frasier. What is this? The 90s, right? And it was between her and that other broad, I think. And it was like, oh, she's up for it. She's going to get it. This is going to be the big break. She was struggling in her career. She's waiting tables. She's about to give up, like the whole thing, 3 feet from gold, was about to give up. And she fucking, and she didn't get the role. And it was devastating. She was devastated because it was just like one more, I should quit. What am I doing? I'm failing. You know what I mean? And it's always right before you're about to give up, something fucking cool happens. That's why they say 3 feet from gold. Don't stop digging, because you could be 3 feet from gold. Don't fucking quit. And so she, all the disappointments that come from losing this massive job. And then, like, shortly after, she got Friends. And she looks back on that now, and she's like, if I would have gotten Roz, I would have never gotten Friends. And Friends made my life. Like, who's the actress who played Roz? I'm sure some of you know. I don't know. But like, Lisa Kudrow's a fucking household name, way more than the other one. Not to compare, sorry. But like, I just mean, like, it will always work out in the end. And if it's not working out, it's not the fucking end. So just keep swimming, man. You never know. You're just 3 feet from gold. I think I told you guys about, I'm reading this book where it's Think and Grow Rich. And it's a lot of like life lessons, a lot of, just like mental state, laws of attraction, all that. And, back in the gold mining days, whenever people were mining gold a lot, this guy went out west to mine some gold, and he spent a bunch of money. I'm totally paraphrasing, but he spent a bunch of money to fucking dig for gold. And he was digging and he was digging and he was digging. And then finally he gave up and was like, fuck this. I'm going back to where I came from, and I'm never going to get gold. And then right afterwards, another guy swooped in, went in the exact same spot, and 3 feet from where that guy quit, he struck a bunch of gold. So just keep your eye on the ball. Keep your eye on the ball. You ready for a poop scoop? I have so many poop scoops to read, guys. I have my emails full. So, not full, there's like 4. But please send me your poop scoops. This week, I'm going to tell a story that I just remembered that isn't from the emails. But please send me your poop scoop. It is kimcrawlspace@gmail.com. If you pooped your pants, you have a funny poop story, an embarrassing poop story, a weird poop story, send it to me, send it to me, send it to me. I would love it. KimCrawlspace, KymKralspace @gmail.com. Please send it there. And then, and if you don't want me to read your name, you don't have to specify, because if you don't specify, I won't read your name. But if you don't care, you can say my name, right? And then I will send you. Thank you. I'm backlogged on that. So if you send a poop scoop, you will be getting the episode and a thank you. Don't worry. So the poop scoop. So my friend from high school, I am running so behind. My doctor's appointment's in like 20 minutes and I have to pee really bad. My friend from high school. So when you are a cheerleader or pom is a dance team, is what we called our dance team, the poms, because they had pom-poms, I think, and the cheerleaders didn't have pom-poms. I don't fully actually know if that's how it went. But oh my God, I got to pee so bad. So we go to camp. I think I've told you about it. If I didn't, I will at some point. It's much what I imagine hell to be like. Just everything's a fucking cheer. But at pom camp, so you stay in you stay in these dorms, like college dorms, right? And you have like a bathroom you share or whatever. And like teenage girls suck, man. They just kind of suck. I know that's a blanket. As a teenage girl, they're just kind of mean, right? And there's a hierarchy. And if you're not at the top of it, everything's embarrassing. So they were leaving, but she had to poop really bad, right? And so she had to poop really bad. And so she's pooping. And they're like pounding on the door and they're like, come on, blah, blah. I'm not going to say her name, but come on, blah, blah. Hurry up. We got to go. And so she finishes pooping and she flushes the toilet and it won't go down. And she doesn't know what to do. And it's like, not a massive one, but it's a big enough one that it won't go down. And she doesn't know what to do. And she's like, fuck, what do I do? And believe me, I've been here and I've done the same thing. Not exactly the same thing, but I've done. And they're like screaming at her, like, come on, hurry up. What is taking you so long? Are you shitting? Gross. Is she shitting? And she's like, I can't know I shit. I'm 15. My life will be ruined if they know I shit. So she reaches into the toilet and pulls out the poop and doesn't know what to do with it. So she doesn't reach in yet, but she pulls up the back tank. She lifts the lid and then reaches in the toilet and puts the poop in the tank of the toilet and puts it in there, washes her hands and leaves. I've never put it in the tank of the toilet, but I've for sure pulled it out of the toilet in a public bathroom and put it in the trash can because it was oh God, I think I told you guys this one early on. It was like at an open mic where I knew literally everyone at the bar and it wouldn't go down. And it was a really gross bar anyway. So it was just like, no one's going to notice. And I just wrapped it up in toilet paper and put it at the bottom of the trash can. I said that on the Kim and Ken show when we first got it. And the guy who was our sound engineer, Ivan, the way he looked at me was just like, what the fuck? And I was like, yeah, I don't think I've ever told anybody that. So she reaches down and puts the poop in the tank of the toilet, right? And puts it in the tank of the toilet. And she what do I say? Oh yeah. So then she runs and whatever, tries and thinks nothing of it. But when you do that, that water goes into, I think how it works, it goes into the other, it fills up the tank. Like it's like a system, like a, whatever. So that water fills up and then goes in there. I don't know, but somehow that water ends up in the toilet. So all week, the toilet water is just bright brown because it's just the toilet breaking down this big turd and it smells so bad. And my friend blah blah was like, I didn't know what to do because I was terrified I was going to get caught. So then I spread the rumor that it was some other girl. So they like blamed some girl for like ruining the toilet all week. I don't know where she is, but her life was definitely never the same again. Oh man, that's your poop scoop. Also, by the way, that was my best friend from high school, and she was really mean in high school. Loved her. She was never mean to me. Yeah, she's sometimes mean to me, but she was kind of a mean girl. But man, fucking brutal. But you have to. Teenage girls, it's a dog eat dog world. It's better you than me, right? That's how. I mean, it shouldn't be that way, but that's how it is, right? So that's a poop scoop, and I'm gonna end you with I'm one lucky broad. I don't know. I'm one lucky broad for all this fucking growth. It's really painful. It's really scary. It's really hard, but it's so worth it. If you are struggling with shit and you're like, yeah, if you're struggling with shit and you're like, oh, I don't really, but it's painful to look at your stuff is really painful, but it's much more painful to like carry it forever. So if you're on the fence about not looking at your shit, Take the leap, man. You're worth it. You're worth it. You're worth working through your shit. You're worth having a full life and letting this stuff go. You just are. That's it. That's the episode. If you get a second, please rate, review. You know, I have a Patreon. I'm getting out some goodies to all of you this week or next week before I go to Denver. I almost said move to Denver. That's one of my biggest fears is I'll have to move back to Denver. I dream about it constantly. We'll get into that another time. But sending out some stuff. You get some bonus episodes. You get a little bit of free content. Not free because you're paying the Patreon. I'm posting. I know I say this every week. I'm sorry, guys. I as my lovely sponsor has told me on being kind to myself that I am a one woman shop. So I am not quite where I can hire help, but you know, maybe one day I'll be able to hire an assistant or something. So I'm a one woman shop, but I have two videos I'm going to put up on the Patreon. One's my one woman show and one is my flapper set from this last week that I did with my agent that I crushed. It was awesome. So I'll put that up on the Patreon. So if you can and you want to contribute to the crawl space, the crawl ski, I was going to say, join my Patreon. I would love it, love it, love it. If you haven't yet, please buy my book. Oh, also, if you're a Patreon member, I am working on my audiobook. It is a nightmare, but I am doing it, and you'll get a free download of that if you're a Patreon subscriber. I think that's it. Thank you guys for your love, your support. Be kind. Be kind, work hard, be grateful. Ski to it all. Love you all so much. Be safe. Bye.